Hey, welcome you guys. Welcome to Sunday's, fairy tale night, I'm not sure about what time it is. It's kind of dark, But I figure I got a few minutes here to tell you these little stories. And because, if you're new here and nobody really reads these stories that I do about fairy tales, it really wouldn't hurt you to take an ear of one of these things because they're so close to and very much are the same coded languages that we get from our Bibles. And if you love and cherish the stories of the Bibles, I know a lot of people love and cherish some of these fairy tales that they had learned as a child. So today's and what I'm trying to say is that there's a particular code. There's a way things are written that reveal a different story from the outside. Each one of these stories that I have been telling, including the stories of the Bible, some of our most famous stories of the Bible, and it could be any of them. Exodus. It can be Samson and Goliath. This idea of pitting two things against each other. And this fight for being the boss of yourself is basically what this is about. But if you read the story from the outside, you get the cloak, or you get what's called the veil. And if you have tuned your ear to the stories that I'm talking about, to the code of the system, to understanding what they're really talking about and what is being spoke of inside by the symbolism and the wording that they use. Okay. Just to give you a quick hint, today's is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, so the seven is going to come into play. The very first stories they didn't have names for the Seven Dwarfs, but some of the cartoons and later additions to the story did. Some of them they named them Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So if you were to think about that for a moment, you would see that is the days of creation. And the way you would learn about it on here, and I'm going to give you a quick insight, because when she runs off, when her stepmother is out to kill her, remember in these stories how they start off, what's your problem, why are you running away, where are you going? Oh, well, my stepmother or my father was going to kill me because I'm not a good hunter anymore, it's gonna strangle me, it's gonna cut my head off, and all of these meant something different. And of course, when you're looking for worlds, this is a world story similar to the musicians, where all four were going down the road and they were going to the big city, and all they really needed to learn is how to work together and become as one chord. And of course they made it into this little place, this little room, and where they lived happily ever after. And of course it was so this is another four story. This is a world. Someone is looking to master the world. But in this instance, it's the stepmother who's coming in, as would be like the king. The king is gone. The king is off to war through this whole story. And so she rules this as the stepmother, because of course the king's original wife dies in giving birth to Snow White. So what you would find is whenever she is introduced to the Seven Dwarfs in here, they don't give them their names, but when they come back and find that she has been in their room, it's just like the Three Bears stories, in Goldilocks, right? It says someone had the first, let's do it by numbers. It says someone had been sitting in my chair. Someone has been eating from my plate. Someone has been eating my bread. Someone has been eating my vegetables. Someone has been something with a fork. I don't know where it is right now. 5 is poking with a fork, or stabbing with a fork. 6 is cutting with a knife, and 7 is drinking from my mug. All right, those are the 7 chakras again. I'm going to tell you this because chair is when you're sitting. That's the first phase, is the chair. You know, it's like an outside thing. You're sitting down, you're relaxing as a chair. Two is to eat from this plate. Remember, everyone has to, you know, the frog, please princess, will you let me eat from your plate, you know, and they're always talking about, you know, serving. Bread, 3. Vegetables, 4 for the world. I think it's just that you have all these different things that you could choose from for your nourishment. 5 is the fork, you know, got to pluck yourself. You're the guy that goes up. And 6 is that cutting point, and the 6 is the cutting. We have the knife. We have to rent. You know, we're cutting. You know, this is that idea of the knife coming in at 6. And of course, 7 is the mug. When you drink from the new wine, the new you. This is the rest and being fed. The number 7. So it's going to play off the 7s, but it's really, you know, the whole stories are all about 4, because the way it works is this woman comes after her 4 times to kill her, and each one of those is representing the 4 different worlds, and that would be the first part would be the black there, but she is the intellect, the emotional side of us. She also goes for the spirit, the physical side of us, and she is also going, you know, for the emotion, the Christian, the spiritual side. She wants all of this. She wants it all right, and it's all based around beauty, and this would be like being beautiful on the outside and being ugly on the inside, and all these stories have that. You know, when the stepmothers come in and the stepsisters, they all are beautiful on the outside, but there's something wrong, there's something rotten on the inside. And of course our stories in the Bible talk about, you look like a beautiful little scepter or specular or something, you know, like for you know, an urn or something, some kind of mausoleum. You look beautiful on the outside, but you contain death, and you know, you're rotten and decayed on the inside. That's the way all these stories are. Even with Buddha, they talk about, you know, hey, you work so much on cleaning the outside of the cup, and you put no effort into cleaning the inside of the cup. And of course, this is where the residue and stuff causes you trouble, which is why this idea of getting even cleans out the inside of the cup, so that whenever, you know, you come across something that may bother you or could harm you or make you frightened or afraid, that doesn't no longer bother you, that it takes that away from you. And this is the simple stories that lead on to this simple way of going inside of yourself and simply cleaning house. All right. And of course, the way this is going to work, I want to read the very first part of this, the very beginning of how she starts out, because, you know, we've seen so many versions of the story, and basically I haven't. This is my first time ever reading it. It's my first time ever fully watching any show at all about Snow White, ever. All right? Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs just didn't appeal to me. Just didn't understand what it was. I thought, hey, this is something that's for girls, you know. And I was a kid when all this stuff was going on. But we'll start off like this. Once upon a time, in midwinter, a queen sat sewing in her window, which had a frame of black ebony wood. As she sewed, she looked up at the snow and pricked her finger with the needle. 3 drops of blood fell on the snow. The red and the white looked so beautiful that she thought to herself, if only I had a child as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as the wood in this frame. That's number 1. That's setting everything up. Now, number 2 is she gave birth to Snow White. That's the second phase. Second time around, she actually dies. The third is that she dies, the mother dies, and they acquire a year later another mother, a stepmother. All right. This stepmother came with a special mirror, And she was so vain and so caught up on her looks that she kept track of it all the time. And in her kingdom, which is what we're talking about, the kingdom, all four of these within her kingdom, I am the fairest of them all. And of course, this little baby, the little girl, she was just a child at this particular time. All right, and of course, the mirror didn't tell a lie. And told her that she was the fairest of them all. Oh, and she just relished in this. All right, well, the way the number systems go here, the number 7 in the 7th part of this story that came in, it says Snow White grew up and at the age of 7 years old was already beautiful as the light of day, even more beautiful than the queen herself. And they use that word even. That even comes in around 6 and 7, always in these stories. And of course, I've said this a whole number of times, many, many, many times. One day the queen asked the mirror, and the mirror told her that Snow White is 1,000 times fairer than she was. And of course, that happens whenever they go into the mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all. In this kingdom, that is introducing the number 4 whenever they do it, and he answers back to her. This is still number 4. So 5 would be like her reaction to it, and 5 represents the skin. Okay, so the queen looked fright, took fright, and she was green with envy at Snow White, and her heart turned over inside her body. So great was her hatred of this girl that envy and pride grew ever so greater, like a weed in her heart, until she had no peace day or night, and she ordered her huntsman to take her out into the woods and kill her. Now, when God tells you to go out there and kill your firstborn, would be almost like the thing of Abraham. What happens is he takes her out into the woods to kill her, and he's an archer. He doesn't. He gets to the point of to kill her, and she begs, "Please don't do this. Please set me free." And having pity with her, he set her free. But he just like all these stories, he had to bring something back to prove he'd done it. He has this first time she's supposed to bring back the lung and her liver. So we're talking about physical side of our body. So she's going after the south. She's going after the southern part of us. All right. So like Abraham and Isaac wound up not being killed, and they took a ram instead. They found something in the thickets there, and they took him instead. So it's a little play on that. All right. And he tells her to run away. Now this was the first attempt. All right. Alone in the forest, she began to run till it was about evening, and she saw a little house and went inside in order to gain some rest. All right, so here we are again at that little place that she ran all day long. Was tired and tuckered out, and she came across this little house. She entered it to get some rest. But in this particular house, it was really small and cute, and she just wondered what it was. She was looking around. She saw 7 little beds and 7 little things, 7 everything, all dressed little snow white linen all around. And so what she gets is she was trying. She was also hungry, so she tried from each one of these things. And of course, this is where you get the introduction of the 7 helpers, I call them. Of course, we have him sitting in a chair. Someone was sitting in my chair. Someone was eating from my plate. Someone was eating from my bread. Someone was eating from my vegetables. Someone was sticking with my fork, and someone was cutting with my knife. Someone was drinking with my mug. They perk up. They let's see. What happens is they start tromping around trying to see who it is, and of course the same thing happened with the beds. One bed was too big and one bed was too small. But when she wound up, she said, "But the one that was the seventh bed, she fit just perfectly in." All right, and so they whenever they noticed this, what happens is they picked and dug. This is what the seven dwarfs do for a living. They pick and dug and dig for ore in the mountains. They lit their 7 candles as soon as it was light in their house, and they saw that someone had been there. Snow White, let's see, sought comfort in this on the 7th bed and fell asleep, and she was soon discovered. Now they all clung around her, and they all shined their 7 lights upon her, and were just delighted in it and her beauty, that they didn't wake her, so they let her sleep until the next morning. And of course, when she woke up the next morning, she was terrified by these 7 guys. She didn't know what to do. She said, so they made friends, and they said, "Oh no, no." So they said they let her sleep, and the 7 dwarfs slept. Oh, and the 7th one, this is way good. They slept as a, for the night to go on, but the one that she slept in, the bed, the guy that she slept in had to sleep with each one of the other brothers for an hour until morning came. So this is the completion of a particular thing, and as they were coming back down, this is a part of the story where they're already up there, gone up. This is she's taken all these works. She made it to the spot. She's gone inside. Now she's met these people, and not met them yet, but she is accepted by them. All right, until morning comes, and then she introduces herself and tells them of the wicked stepmother's story, and how that how the huntsman had let her free. And that she had been there, she had ran for the day before coming up into their house. So they made a pact. They said, if you care for us, if you make our food and you keep the place clean and do all this, we'll be one happy family. And she said, "Oh, I would love to do it, and I would give up my whole heart, But they said, "But beware, your stepmother, she sounds real mean, so, be careful. If anyone ventures this far out in the woods, you can pretty much say that they are going to be evil. So don't do anything with them. Stay away from them. Do not open the door or accept anything from these people." Oh, she says they could do that. So, the queen thought that she had eaten Snow White's lungs and livers. She asked the mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all. And of course it said again that, I'm sorry, but Snow White is still saying, she's still 1,000 times fairer than you. Donning the disguise, she leapt off to the dwarf's house, also as a peddler. This time she had created some kind of a lace in all colors, and it's made from a colorful silk. And what she was doing is this here is, how those girls, they have these little things that drape up their breasts, and that in the Old Testament they talk about having a breastplate and the different jewels and stuff inside of it. They're talking about the Kundalini. And of course, any time that these stories talk about weaving and women weaving or sewing, weaving by a window, this is this beautiful side of us, of our female energy, of the spiritual side that is waiting and keeping, just tending to the house, while in the heart keeping the fire going, while things are in waiting. All right. And so what do we get out of this is this woman, she finds out that she was deceived. She was deceived by this guy, and that Snow White really did live. And so she sets out to kill her again. This is for the second time that she's going to do this, and she creates some kind of a disguise, and she goes out to try to do it again. And this time, she was going after the weave, so she's going after the east. All right, and what she did was she showed up at her house. She knocked on the door and she poked her head out. And she says, I'm sorry, but I'm not allowed to let anyone in. I've been told not to do this to anybody, you know." And of course, this peddler said, "But I have these beautiful little things." And I guess that they turned on the girl, and she loved these little weavy things, you know, and she set out to buy them. All right. So she opened the door, and this woman came in. She says, "How about this?" So while Snow White was putting it on, she asked, "I'll help you and put it on correctly." And as she was weaving it in and out and in and out, she pulled the last string so tight that Snow White recognized that this was evil. "You're not trying to help me. You're trying to hurt me." And next thing you know, she stopped breathing and fell unconscious to the ground. And the queen ran off, all right, thinking that she had done her end, all right. Well, as the day, you know, that this wasn't too far away from nightfall, that the dwarfs would make it back just in time to find their beautiful Snow White laid out on the ground, damn near dead. And they searched and found that she couldn't breathe, and it looked like she was tied too much. So they took scissors or took a knife, and they cut her weave and brought her back to life. And they told her, she woke up and told them what was going on. So that was the second attempt on her to take away her breath. All right. And of course, the weave and the breath and the business and stuff like that is going to be, we're talking about the east side of us. Okay. By the way, when she travels, she has to travel over 7 mountains to get to where the dwarfs live. All right. So the queen came back to the mirror and asked again, and again the mirror replied that Snow White was 1,000 times fairer than you are. Now I'm going to break in here real fast and tell you about that 1,000. That 1,000 is the 7th chakra, the 1,000 petals, you know, in Hinduism, you know, when it talks about the chakra system. And I'm also going to insert in here, we're already at the 22 mark. This is an epic story. Most of all of the fairy tale stories that I've been given to you are only about 20 minutes long. Now, when it comes to like Cinderella and this story, these are epic stories. This is like when bringing when Moses is bringing everyone out. I mean, it's just a long, drawn-out, epic story. And it covers all the bases. It really does. All right. All right. So the woman pulled it so tightly that she couldn't breathe, and she fell to the ground. All right. We already did all of that. When she heard this again, her blood ran to her heart. Somehow she was being brought back to life. And this time, she'll think of something new. All right? And this time, I will destroy you. So this is her 3rd time, and they deal with this disguise of a poisoned comb. 7 mountains to the house, and she knocked on the door. Snow White was told by the woman, she told the woman to go away, that she was not able to open the door to anyone. Deceived again, she can't be deceived. Deceiving her again, she was taken by the comb and let the woman in. She asked to comb her hair, and then as soon as the comb took to her hair, she quickly fell unconscious. And the woman laughed and said, "Now you are finished." Okay, so here's your comb running through the hair. I'm thinking that this is probably going to have to be probably the north part of us, the northern side, the part of us that has to do with our emotions. Okay. Being close to the evening when this happened, the dwarfs returned and found her laying there almost dead on the floor, and they searched her for everything, and they found this comb in her head, and as soon as they removed it, Snow White returned to life and told them what happened. So they warned her again. Listen, your stepmother will just go to no fault, no ends to try to kill you. Don't open the door and accept nothing from anyone. And of course, these women don't listen. Is that it? Is that the way it was? Is that how it came when the woman opened that box, and let out all those demons because she just couldn't let it. She couldn't just sit around, with a box that had a lid on it, So, anyways, the queen comes out. She comes out. She comes around. She asks the guy, finds out that yes, this woman is 1,000 times fairer than you are. Oh, she's been, it's like everywhere she turns around, she keeps. What is she gonna have to do to kill this woman? This time, she says she turns to an apple. The outside was beautiful, white with red cheeks, and it was made irresistible. But if you bite it, you die. So the queen set out for the little house again, and with a new disguise knocked on the door, and presented Snow White with a free apple. And she said that she will not accept anything. She can't. She's been told she can't do it. She goes, "What, are you afraid of poisons?" She goes, "Look," she cut it in half. And she goes, "Look, I'll eat a piece of it. You can have a piece of it. You'll see it's not bad." But she says that in the story, the narrator says, hey, but the apple was made of such, in such and such, that one side was poison, the red side was poison, and the white side wasn't. She goes, "Look, you can eat the red side, and I will eat the white side." Okay? And whenever they saw the witch, or when she saw the woman eating the white side, she said, "Okay, well, I'll try it." And before she got one little bite going on, she fell dead, just like that. All right, so before the story goes on, we're looking at the black side and the white side. I think that this apple that we're talking about right now is talking about this, our religious thing, because this is totally the left side and the right side. Red is meant for Cain. This is the red earth. This is Adam. This is the left side of us, our intellect. That's the idea of this. All right. And the white side is the spiritual side. And of course they swapped this. She wants this witch wants Snow White to consume the red side while she consumes the white side. So you see, it's this idea that this stepwoman is looking for complete dominance. She wants all four of these worlds in one. Okay? So as she looks at this woman in a ghastly stare, and she laughs. She says, "Not even your boys will be able to open this up," So, and she traipses off. And of course, when she comes to the mirror finally tells her what she wanted to know and says, "Yes, you are the fairest in the land." So this sets up, that she actually did kill this girl in some way. So now it gets a little on the morbid side, because when they came home that night, they found her dead. And they did everything they could. They loosened the strings on her. They combed her hair, and they washed her body with water and wine, but nothing would wake her up. And so they created this coffin, and they put it's a bear. Remember, it's a bear, where they could move it around. And that was in the last story too. So they put her on this coffin. Of course, she was dead, but she wasn't dead. She didn't die. She didn't decay. She was just sitting there, just so beautiful, with the red cheeks. So beautiful, white was her skin, and red was her cheeks, and black was her skin. Black was her hair. And of course, hair is known as what grows out of you. So hair is the natural side of us. So it's an interesting play with the 1, 2, and the 3. Plus, it goes from Snow White to red to to black. So where have you heard anything like that before? When the sun, which we could say is the white, the moon turns red, and something goes to sackcloth. The dark as a sack. The sun goes dark as sackcloth. But anyways, it's somewhere in there. That 1, 2, 3 is in there. I can feel it, I can hear it, I can see it, and I'll do a story on it one day to clarify it. But that 3, 1, 2, 3, all right, is the idea of the change. All right, so they build her a coffin with a glass top on it, a glass lid. They just didn't want to. So they didn't want to bury her in the black earth. All right. So they set her up it's in this beautiful coffin, and sat her on the side of a mountain. And they mourned her for 3 days, and that's the way it was. They said that the story kind of takes a weirdness where they said where all the animals came to mourn her, and she was dead for days and days, and for a long, long, long time. They say that 3 times. And so what comes to her in the animal world? What comes to her? Owl. An owl comes to her. A raven, which means a negative thought. And wisdom is the owl. The raven is a negative thought. And the dove is a positive thought. And if you can remember, they're not really talking about the wisdom part of the ark. But what they would do is they would say, first he let out, this doves and the raven. And the raven actually loved the land, so he never came back. All right, so he didn't get a good lesson from this. But it was the dove that came back with the pieces of earth that came back to them to talk to him. So anyways, not so long after that, there was a prince venturing into that part of the woods and stumbled across this place, and he thought he would stay in there for a little bit of shelter, a little rest. And while he was in there, he stumbled across this girl's coffin on a mountain, and he just was so taken by her beauty that he asked the 7 dwarfs if he could buy that, not with any gold. I'll give you anything. I can't live. Let me see if I can find it correctly, the way he wrote it. He says, let me have the coffin, I'll give you anything. Not for all the gold in the world, they said. Then give it to me for free. I can't live without being able to see my Snow White. All right. This is that go for her. I gotta have her, Taking pity, the dwarfs give him the coffin, and his servants carry it away on his shoulders, and one of them trips, and when they do this, it dislodges the piece of apple that was in her mouth. A few minutes later, she woke up. She rose up. She opened up the lid. Oh my God, she says, and where in heaven am I? All right. This is when the prince begins his proposal. Oh, I love you. Come with me to my father's kingdom. I'll love you forever and ever, and all this, All right, and of course, this is where our disclaimer comes in. You don't always get this at the end, but Cinderella, she was the mean one, right? With those birds picking out the stepdaughters, picking out their eyes. It's crazy. Well, look what happens with this one. And you have to understand that the proposal, when she wakes up, that's 7, all right? God, heavens, where am I? Then she gets proposed to. This is the new her. They've been brought together. This is not the new her. This is really the new prince. This is probably the way this is going to work. This prince then promises the world. This is the 8th chakra. 9 is when you've changed consciousness. The last of this is, the very last part of this is where you have now gone from being red to being white. You're being now run by the white horse instead of the red horse. Instead of being run by your emotions and stuff, you're now being run by your spiritual side. And so the godless queen was invited to the feast. All right, this is number 9. All right. she got into her dress. She stepped in front of her mirror, and she asked, "Who's the fairest of them all?" And of course, the mirror told her that, of course, you were fairest of them all. But when it came down to Snow White, is still 1,000 times fairer than you are. This just pissed her off, and it frightened her at the same time because she didn't know what to do. She didn't want to go to this wedding, but she had to. And so when she was there, she was just she couldn't move. She stood absolutely still. And what they gave her is they took two iron shoes, a pair of iron shoes, and they stoked them in over some coals. And with tongs, they placed them in front of her and forced her to put them on and danced in them until she drops dead. My. Is that the way it was in the real story? Is that the way it is is that the way they talk about it in the Walt Disney stories? You know, tell me that, because I haven't seen it, and I'm kind of over fairy tales for today, you know. But do you see that these are all the same stories? They're all really, you know, a mechanical, you know, template to being able to relay a message of a kundalini, of a system of a desire, an internal desire for an individual to regain or how to maintain after a certain about himself, a certain control within himself where he becomes the master, and that you are truly worshiping one God at this particular time. All right? Because you have brought these all together as one. Absolutely wonderful stories, and it's interesting how many adaptions, how many different ways it can be spoken of, you know. Like whenever I thought about it, I just knew the Seven Dwarfs was in there somewhere, but how do we make it, you know? And that I don't have to work really hard to get this stuff to work or to fit into the code. It's absolutely wonderful. And that there was no names for these guys is very interesting, because in some instances there's this Jumpy, I can't remember what's one of these here, damn it. Puffy, Burpy, Stuffy, Lazy, Wheezy. You know, they all gave him these names. You know that Grumpy one in there, I think he's always this, I think Grumpy is number one when it comes down to it. Because that'd be your outside, you know, when you're being fed your lies and all this stuff. But anyways, I hope you guys caught that. You know, look how awful. You know, tomorrow is Monday for me. I've been holding on a paycheck because the banks have been open. But they open on Monday. I'm going to get a haircut. I'm going to clean up a little bit, you know. There's a mosquito. Listen, I've killed much of them today, you know. But anyways, I love you guys. Take care of yourself. I know it's long, but that's how it goes on some of these stories. And so much for a short one, you know, or a quickie, you know. But those I've noticed are only about 20 minutes long, and these big ones are an hour or more, you know, to read them perfectly, you know. I love you guys. Take care of yourself. I'll see you soon.